you know, George W. Bush pushed through a lot of stuff that I think the people that are real conservatives should have stood up and fought harder against.
Yeah.
But because it was their guy, you kind of sit back, and to some degree that's an understandable human instinct. But with Barack Obama, I think, focused it so much. I mean, do you think this would have even occurred if it had been another Republican in office?
You know, I think it actually might have, because I traced the roots of the Tea Party movement not to Obama's stimulus bill, but to Bush's TARP bill. And people forget this now because they came back really quickly to ram it through a second time once they bought off a few votes, like the senator from Nebraska.
I will tell you that I think the roots go back farther than that. I came back, do you remember, when was I here, Pat? And I came back and I said, there's trouble in Texas. Do you remember that? Was it right after?
It seems like it was maybe 2007.
No, I think it might have been.
6.
Do you remember? 6? I mean, it was right around the time we were starting to throw these Border Patrol people into jail, and I came down, I think, to visit you, and I looked at what was going on, and I could feel it in Texas. And I came back to New York, and I said, there's a disconnect. Texas is ahead, and nobody is they're starting not to trust the government, and there's something wrong here. And we started looking into it, and they were right. And so I think the real Tea Party movement started that we were, for the first time, the scales were falling off our eyes. And we were starting to say, wait a minute, this jingoistic, rah, 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 USA, USA thing, I've been duped. I've been duped. They're spending money like it's water. He's doing the education thing, but we let the wars distract us. And then something wasn't right. And then TARP happened, and people were on board.
Yeah. But that was the day they shut the Capitol down. And nobody inside the Beltway thought that there was even a slight chance of defeating the TARP bailout on the House floor. But it was dead within moments. And we were fighting the bill. We're inside the Beltway fighting this bill. And I literally joked that the entire anti-TARP movement inside the Beltway, you could have fit them in a Volkswagen. And all of a sudden, we shut down the Capitol. We being this community of people who now have these tools. They knew what was in the bill. They knew what to do about it, and that's what's different. There's a leveling of the playing field between the insiders who always had that secret information. They're talking to the committee chairman and the rest of us. Now we know too. And we have tools that make it very economically doable to weigh in. If it's send an email or just connect on Facebook, that's not a burden on anybody.
It's really the powers that be know they're about to lose their power. We've talked about it before. It's like a point of singularity where they know the power of one is coming for them. We don't have to have anyone in between us now. We want them to represent us on a daily basis. We don't want everything else, all that apparatus around them, because it always pulls them off. And so they know that the party system is falling apart and it's not working, and so they have to put us in a box, both Republicans and Democrats, right?
Right.
So how is it that do you think that there's going to be a death nail into that coffin at all in the party system? How do we get there?
I think this election is probably a tipping point. It may be the Empire Strikes Back, or we might actually beat him this time. And that's why I think a lot of these Republican primaries in the Senate are a test of our ability to beat the establishment. Because the Republican Party doesn't matter that much anymore. Democratic Party, the official party apparatus doesn't matter as much.
It's a Communist Party, it's a Socialist Party. It is. I mean, a lot of it is. I mean, they're socialist or communist, a lot of them.
They've been hijacked by the progressive movement.
Yeah.
So it is, in fact, the Progressive Party now. But why can't we do that? Why can't we take over what used to be the Republican Party and make it a party of freedom?
What happened to the Democrats I mean, my grandfather would not have been with these people. You know, the friends that were always Democrats, I would have never put them in with these people.
Yeah.
What will it take for them to get away from these people? Why is the Tea Party or the independence movement not growing substantially, or is it?
Oh, I think it is. But it's not, I wouldn't really call it the Tea Party brand anymore. I think it's something broader than that.
Tea Party is not, I mean, the Tea Party was a moment in time, and I think the Tea Party, you know, the tricornered hats, it's over.
Right.
It's over. if you want to win, you can't be the red, white, and blue Tea Party kind of thing, but you also you can't be the crazy libertarian that, look, I'm for no drug laws 100 years from now when we're all responsible enough to step over the drug user and say, you're a loser, man.
Yeah.
And I'll help you if you want to get up on your own 2 feet. I'll help you. But I'm not going to pay for a whole bunch of programs to get you to be able to have drugs. I'm not going to do it.
But you're not declaring the end of the Tea Party itself, right? You're just saying that
it has to morph. It has to change. It has to update.
The colonial-wearing, goofy-looking, attention-grabbing part of the Tea Party may be over, but now the real work kind of begins.
Yeah, now it's a
real. It's got to be more, I think, of a grown-up movement. It's got to be a more active movement.
Well, I mean, in the original Tea Party, at one point they were throwing tea overboard. At another point, they had a country to run, and they had a presidency, and they had an actual constitution, and it does change.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have that yet, though.
No, you got to keep working. I mean, but
we don't have a president. We don't have I mean, that's the problem. There's no real leader for this movement to model yourself after, which I think is still a good thing. I mean, Pat, you and I talk about this a lot, that last thing we need is a charismatic leader.
Yeah.
I mean, that always leads to trouble.
That's why Rick Santorum would be so great.
He's a sweater vest.
He's not charismatic.
He's not at all. Not at all. He's not exciting anybody to round anybody up in the camps.
He's not making fiery speeches that's going to ignite a crowd of 250,000.
No, it's not going to happen.
But even the brand Tea Party was something that the media, I think, purposely glommed onto the party in the name, and they said, okay, well, let's treat it like a political party. And it wasn't that. I mean, Rick Santelli accidentally branded it and connected us to our history. But if you look at the evolution, we were a protest movement, and we were wearing tricorner hats, and we were waving flags, and we had all of that. These are things that protest movements do because you got to get people's attention. We got their attention. We morphed into a get-out-the-vote machine, and nobody expected what happened in 2010 to happen. So we caught everybody off guard. So now I feel like we have a seat at the table. We have a minority position inside Washington. There are good guys and girls in Washington representing our values, but they are abused by both the Republican and the Democratic parties.
Big time.
Yeah.
So we got to grow that position from the bottom up, though. It's not. I don't think it's all about the presidency. I never did. And I think what's the most important thing George Washington ever did? He gave up power. He walked away from people demanding that he lead still again. And that was his form of leadership. I think the responsibility is on everybody watching the show, every American that's worried about their country. The first question you got to ask these guys, what are you doing? If you don't like these candidates, what are you going to do to fix it? Because it's your responsibility. The founders told you that.
But I think it's also incumbent upon people that are 8,000 years old and have been, in Congress for the last 57 years to say, you know what, I'm not greater than George Washington. He served 2 terms.
Right.
And I need to set an example. It is time for me to go away. And I don't care if you've been there for 500 years or for 2 terms. It's time for you to walk away. And they all get seduced by that power and think, if I walk away, well, then nobody else. What kind of egomaniac are you?